Expand your vocabulary with our Core 2000 Words ebook. It's free and packed with essential expressions that you'll use on a daily basis. Start building your vocabulary today. Click the link in the description below to download your free Spanish ebook before it's gone.
Welcome to Can Do Spanish by SpanishPod101.com.
Hola a todos. Soy Víctor Trejo. Hi everyone, I'm Víctor Trejo. In this lesson, you'll learn how to introduce yourself in Spanish.
This is Mark Lee, and he's on a plane to Mexico. Ángel Salazar, a passenger sitting next to him, introduces himself by saying, "Hi, I'm Ángel. Nice to meet you."
Hola, soy Ángel. Mucho gusto.
Listen to the conversation and focus on Mark's response. Note, even though this is their first encounter, both Ángel and Mark use only their first names. Ready?
Hola, soy Ángel. Mucho gusto.
Mucho gusto. Soy Mark.
Once more with the English translation.
Hola, soy Ángel. Mucho gusto.
Hi, I'm Ángel. Nice to meet you.
Mucho gusto. Soy Mark.
Nice to meet you. I'm Mark.
Let's take a closer look at Mark's response.
Do you remember how Mark Lee introduces himself? Nice to meet you. I'm Mark.
Mucho gusto. Soy Mark.
First is the expression,
Mucho gusto.
meaning, nice to meet you.
Mucho gusto. Mucho gusto.
This expression literally means much pleasure, but translates as nice to meet you.
Mucho gusto.
This expression can be used in any situation, from an informal encounter to a business meeting. Do you remember how Mark says, "I'm Mark"?
Soy Mark.
First is,
Soy.
I am.
Soy. Soy.
Note,
Soy.
is a shortened form of,
Yo soy.
in Spanish,
Yo.
I is usually omitted,
Soy.
is from the verb,
Ser.
meaning to be in Spanish.
Ser.
Next is the name,
Mark.
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 Together, it's,
Soy Mark.
I'm Mark.
Soy Mark.
The sentence pattern is,
Soy name.
I'm name.
Soy name.
To use this pattern, simply replace the name placeholder with your name. Imagine you're Karen. In Spanish,
Karen. Karen.
say, I'm Karen. Ready?
Soy Karen.
I'm Karen.
Soy Karen.
Note that Mexican people have two last names. The first one comes from the father's family and the second one from the mother's. In a formal situation, people might give you only their first last name, or they might give you both. For example, Angel's full name is Ángel Salazar Almonte. In a formal situation, such as when he's talking to a colleague, he might say, Soy Ángel Salazar. I'm Ángel Salazar. Soy Ángel Salazar. Or in an even more formal situation, such as when he's introducing himself to a new boss, he would probably give both last names. Soy Ángel Salazar Almonte. I'm Ángel Salazar Almonte. Soy Ángel Salazar Almonte. You should give your full name in business or formal situations, but in more casual settings, it's fine to give only your first name.
Let's look at some examples of people introducing themselves. Listen and repeat, or speak along with the native speakers.
Mucho gusto. Soy Ángel. Mucho gusto. Soy Ángel.
Mucho gusto. Soy Mark. Mucho gusto. Soy Mark.
Mucho gusto. Soy Karen. Mucho gusto. Soy Karen.
Mucho gusto. Soy Víctor. Mucho gusto. Soy Víctor.
Mucho gusto. Me llamo Sonia. Mucho gusto. Me llamo Sonia.
Did you notice how the last speaker replaces soy with me llamo?
She says,
Mucho gusto. Me llamo Sonia.
Nice to meet you. My name is Sonia.
Mucho gusto. Me llamo Sonia.
This pattern uses the phrase,
Me llamo.
which literally means I myself call, but translates as my name is.
Me llamo.
First is the word
Me.
meaning me.
Me. Me.
After this is
Llamo.
I call.
Llamo. Llamo.
Note
Llamo.
is the shortened form of,
Yo llamo.
in Spanish,
Yo
I is usually omitted,
llamo.
is from the verb
Llamar.
meaning to call. Next is the name.
Sonia. Sonia.
Altogether, it's
Me llamo Sonia.
literally, myself I call Sonia, but it translates as my name is Sonia.
Me llamo Sonia.
The pattern is
Me llamo name.
my name is name.
Me llamo name.
You should be aware of this pattern, but for this lesson, we'll use the sentence pattern
Soy name.
I'm name.
Soy name.
Let's review the key vocabulary.
Hola.
Hello,
Hola. Hola. Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember how to say, nice to meet you? Mucho gusto. Mucho gusto.
and the Spanish pronunciation of Mark's name?
Mark. Mark.
Do you remember how Mark says, I'm Mark?
Soy Mark. Soy Mark.
Do you remember how Mark says, nice to meet you, I'm Mark?
Mucho gusto. Soy Mark.
Mucho gusto. Soy Mark. Do you remember how to say hello? Hola. Hola.
Finally, do you remember how Angel says, hi, I'm Angel, nice to meet you?
Hola, soy Ángel. Mucho gusto.
Hola, soy Ángel. Mucho gusto.
Welcome to Can Do Spanish by SpanishPod101.com.
Hola a todos. Soy Víctor Trejo. Hi everyone. I'm Víctor Trejo. In this lesson, you'll learn how to tell someone where you're from in Spanish.
This is Mark Lee, and he's on a plane to Mexico. Angel Salazar Almonte, a passenger sitting next to him, asks, "Where are you from?"
¿De dónde es usted?
Listen to the conversation and focus on Mark's response. Note, the speakers in this conversation use formal Spanish. Ready?
¿De dónde es usted?
Soy de Nueva York.
Once more with the English translation.
¿De dónde es usted?
Where are you from?
Soy de Nueva York.
I'm from New York.
Let's take a closer look at the conversation.
Do you remember how Angel Salazar asks, "Where are you from?"
¿De dónde es usted?
Let's start with
Usted.
a formal word meaning you.
Usted. Usted.
Before
Usted.
is,
Es.
this literally means is, but it translates as are, as in are you when using formal Spanish.
Es. Es.
Note,
Es.
comes from the verb
Ser.
meaning to be.
Ser.
Together,
Es. Usted.
are you when using formal Spanish.
Es. Usted.
Before this is
¿Dónde?
where,
¿Dónde? ¿Dónde?
and at the beginning is
De.
meaning from in this context.
De. De.
Altogether,
¿De dónde es usted?
where are you from when using formal Spanish?
¿De dónde es usted?
Remember this question. You'll hear it again later in this lesson. Now, let's take a closer look at the response. Do you remember how Mark Lee says, "I'm from New York"?
Soy de Nueva York.
First is
Soy.
I am.
Soy. Soy.
Note,
Soy.
is a shortened form of
Yo soy.
I am. In Spanish, the
Yo.
I is usually omitted.
Soy.
Is from the verb
Ser.
meaning to be.
Ser.
Next is
De.
from in this context.
De.
Last is the city,
Nueva York.
New York.
Nueva York. Nueva York.
Altogether,
Soy de Nueva York.
I'm from New York.
Soy de Nueva York.
The pattern is
Soy de city name.
I'm from city name.
Soy de city name.
To use this pattern, simply replace the city name placeholder with the name of your hometown. Imagine you're from Sydney. In Spanish, it's
Sydney. Sydney. Sydney.
say, I'm from Sydney. Ready?
Soy de Sydney.
I'm from Sydney.
Soy de Sydney.
In Spanish, there are basically two language registers. The formal register, which is used to address strangers or people we encounter in business settings, and the informal register, which is used to talk to friends, family, and people younger than yourself. When addressing a single person, there are two options. Usted, when using the formal register, and tú, when using the informal register. Since this lesson's dialogue is between two strangers meeting for the first time, we will be using the formal register in this lesson.
Let's look at some examples. Listen and repeat, or speak along with the native speakers.
Soy de Nueva York. Soy de Nueva York.
Soy de Guadalajara. Soy de Guadalajara.
Soy de Seattle. Soy de Seattle.
Soy de Londres. Soy de Londres.
Soy de Veracruz. Soy de Veracruz.
Soy australiana. Soy australiana.
Did you notice how the last speaker omits the de and replaces a city name with Australiana?
Soy australiana.
I'm Australian.
Soy australiana.
Instead of
De.
plus the city name placeholder, she uses an adjective for her nationality. This pattern is
Soy nationality.
I'm nationality.
Soy nationality.
In Mia Martin's case, she uses a feminine adjective to describe herself.
Soy australiana.
If the speaker were a male from Australia, he would use a masculine adjective
Australiano.
to describe himself.
Soy australiano.
I'm Australian.
Soy australiano.
You should be aware of this pattern, but for this lesson, we'll use the pattern
Soy de city name.
I'm from city name.
Soy de city name.
Let's review the key vocabulary.
Guadalajara.
Guadalajara,
Guadalajara. Guadalajara. Seattle.
Seattle,
Seattle. Seattle. Londres.
London,
Londres. Londres. Veracruz.
Veracruz,
Veracruz. Veracruz.
Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready?
Do you remember how to say New York?
Nueva York. Nueva York.
And the word meaning from? De. De.
Now, do you remember how Mark says, I'm from New York?
Soy de Nueva York.
Soy de Nueva York. Do you remember how to say where? ¿Dónde? ¿Dónde? And the formal word for you? Usted. Usted.
Do you remember how Angel Salazar asks, "Where are you from?"
¿De dónde es usted?
¿De dónde es usted? Do you remember how to say London? Londres. Londres. And the word for Seattle? Seattle. Seattle. Do you remember the word for Veracruz? Veracruz. Veracruz.
Welcome to Can Do Spanish by SpanishPod101.com.
Hola a todos. Soy Víctor Trejo. Hi everyone, I'm Víctor Trejo. In this lesson, you'll learn how to talk about your occupation in Spanish.
This is Mark Lee, and he's on a plane to Mexico. He asks the passenger sitting next to him, Angel Salazar, "Are you a student?"
¿Eres estudiante?
Listen to the conversation and focus on Angel's response. Note, the speakers in this conversation use informal Spanish. Ready?
¿Eres estudiante?
No, no soy estudiante. Soy inversionista.
Once more with the English translation.
¿Eres estudiante?
Are you a student?
No, no soy estudiante. Soy inversionista.
No, I'm not a student. I'm an investor.
Let's take a closer look at the conversation.
Do you remember how Mark asks, "Are you a student?"
¿Eres estudiante?
First is
Eres.
which means are, as in you are.
Eres. Eres.
Note,
Eres.
is a shortened form of
Tú eres.
you are. In Spanish,
Tú.
you is often omitted as it is understood.
Eres.
Comes from the verb
Ser.
meaning to be.
Ser.
Next is
Estudiante.
student.
Estudiante. Estudiante.
In Spanish, all nouns have grammatical gender and are either singular or plural,
Estudiante.
is masculine and singular. Altogether, it's
¿Eres estudiante?
Are you a student?
¿Eres estudiante?
Now, let's take a closer look at the response. Do you remember how Angel says, "No, I'm not a student. I'm an investor"?
No, no soy estudiante. Soy inversionista.
First is
No.
no.
No. No.
It answers Mark's yes or no question. Are you a student?
¿Eres estudiante?
After this, Angel specifies that he is not a student.
No soy estudiante.
I'm not a student.
No soy estudiante.
First is
No.
meaning not here.
No.
Next is
Soy.
I am.
Soy. Soy.
Note,
Soy.
is a shortened form of,
Yo soy.
in Spanish, the
Yo.
I is usually omitted as it is understood,
Soy.
is from the verb
Ser.
meaning to be.
Ser.
Together,
No soy.
literally means not I am, but it translates as I'm not.
No soy.
Next is
estudiante,
student.
estudiante.
Altogether,
No soy estudiante,
I'm not a student.
no soy estudiante.
Angel then tells Mark his actual occupation.
Soy inversionista,
I'm an investor.
soy inversionista.
First is
Soy,
I am.
soy,
Next is
inversionista,
investor.
inversionista, inversionista. Inversionista.
Is a masculine, singular noun. Together,
Soy inversionista,
I'm an investor.
soy inversionista.
Altogether,
No, no soy estudiante, soy inversionista.
no, I'm not a student. I'm an investor.
No, no soy estudiante. Soy inversionista.
The pattern is
No, no soy occupation. Soy actual occupation.
no, I'm not occupation. I'm actual occupation.
No, no soy occupation. Soy actual occupation.
Imagine you're Emma Lopez, a student. Angel Salazar asks you if you're a teacher. The word for a female teacher is
Maestra. Maestra. Maestra.
say, no, I'm not a teacher. I'm a student. Ready?
No, no soy maestra. Soy estudiante.
No, I'm not a teacher. I'm a student.
No, no soy maestra. Soy estudiante.
In Spanish, some occupations have the same word for both genders. For example,
Estudiante. Estudiante. Estudiante.
however, much of the time, words will differ depending on gender. In general, nouns that end in O tend to be masculine, while nouns that end in A tend to be feminine. Let's look at some more examples. Listen and repeat, or speak along with the native speakers.
No, no soy estudiante. Soy inversionista. No, no soy estudiante. Soy inversionista.
No, no soy maestra. Soy estudiante. No, no soy maestra. Soy estudiante.
No, no soy maestro. Soy ingeniero. No, no soy maestro. Soy ingeniero.
No, no soy enfermera. Soy doctora. No, no soy enfermera. Soy doctora.
No, no soy estudiante. Soy maestro. No, no soy estudiante. Soy maestro.
No, soy barista. No, soy barista.
Did you notice how the last speaker omits no soy estudiante?
No, soy barista.
No, I'm a barista.
No, soy barista.
When directly responding to someone's question, it's often possible to omit part of the response. Here, by simply answering
No,
no, you can omit
no soy estudiante.
I'm not a student. This pattern is
No, soy actual occupation.
no, I'm actual occupation.
No, soy actual occupation.
You should be aware of this pattern, but for this lesson, we'll use the pattern
No, no soy occupation. Soy actual occupation.
No, I'm not occupation. I'm actual occupation.
No, no soy occupation. Soy actual occupation.
Let's review the key vocabulary.
Estudiante.
Student,
Estudiante. Estudiante.
teacher,
Maestro. Maestro. Maestra. Maestra.
engineer,
Ingeniero. Ingeniero. Ingeniera. Ingeniera.
nurse,
Enfermero. Enfermero. Enfermera. Enfermera.
doctor,
Doctor. Doctor. Doctora. Doctora. Barista.
barista,
Barista. Barista.
Let's review. Respond to the prompts by speaking aloud. Then repeat after me, focusing on pronunciation. Ready? Do you remember the word for a male investor? Inversionista. Inversionista. Do you remember how Angel says, I'm an investor? Soy inversionista. Soy inversionista. Do you remember how to say student? Estudiante. Estudiante. And how to say not? No. No. Do you remember how Angel says, I'm not a student? No soy estudiante. No soy estudiante. Do you remember how Angel Salazar says, I'm not a student, I'm an investor?
No soy estudiante. Soy inversionista.
No soy estudiante, soy inversionista. Do you remember how Mark Lee asks, Are you a student?
¿Eres estudiante?
¿Eres estudiante? Do you remember the word for a male teacher? Maestro. Maestro. And the word for a female teacher? Maestra. Maestra. Do you remember the word for a male engineer? Ingeniero. Ingeniero.
Want to speed up your language learning? Take your very first lesson with us. You'll start speaking in minutes and master real conversations. Sign up for your free lifetime account. Just click the link in the description.